What's your best story that is 100% real but nobody believes you? My dad, when in Vietnam, got his leg gashed on patrol. He then used a super hot M60 barrel to cauterize it. He even has a scar to prove it, but people don't believe him. I have experience shooting an M60. Those things get super heated and the barrel will get red hot and will actually start to bend if you continue shooting. That story is totally believable. My friend got a girl pregnant when he was 13 and the girl was 15. They met at the beach in Panama City, Florida. She was rich and lived in Ohio. He was poor and lived in Georgia. My friend never told anyone but me. He is now 28 and has a 15-year-old kid only I know about. The only reason he got away with it is because this girl's family was super rich. The girl never said who the guy was and would sometimes fly down to visit him in secret. I did not believe this crap until I saw pictures of his kid. His kid has never met him either and I do not think he even knows he exists. I always daydreamed that if my friend died I would have to tell his parents that he actually had a kid and they had been a grandpa for 15 years and never knew it. Casually daydreaming about what you'd do if your friend was dead. Hahaha. When I was in elementary school, my brother and I were walking home from school after it had rained all day. He started reaching his hand in all the puddles. I asked him what he was doing. Sometimes there's money in these. 3 or 4 puddles later he pulled out a $20 bill. Not sure if he ganked it from somewhere else and planted it or it was legit. Either way, I now check puddles for treasures when there are no witnesses. When I was 15 years old I was in my kitchen, home alone, cutting a pineapple. There was a fly that was buzzing around my face for the past 2 minutes and it was getting really freaking annoying. So, just for the heck of it, out of pure blind rage, I grabbed my knife and swung it at the fly in midair. I sliced the fly in half. Sliced it in freaking half. After I did that, I immediately realized no one would ever believe me. On the way to visit a friend, my husband and I got lost on a highway in Pennsylvania. By some weird chance, my husband's friend drives past us in the opposite direction. We see him and turn around to catch up to him. Finally pulling over, we are standing on the side of the road, 2-lane highway, discussing the directions to the friend's house. Surrounding us are farms with corn and other various crops. Out of nowhere, a duck appears on the opposite side of the road. He is looking at us curiously while we are talking. We watch him look both ways and waddle across the road to where we are standing. Cars are honking at him as they attempt to drive past. He gets over to my husband, pecks at his shoe once, and then promptly walks back across the street dodging cars traveling at highway speed. He made it back across the street and disappeared into the crops. He risked his life to peck my husband's shoe and simply waddled out of our lives. Was walking home when I was 16 and a car pulled up behind me. Inside were 4 guys in balaclavas and a gun pointing out the window. The gun went click. So I freaking bombed it over a hedge and ran like heck to the sound of some guy yelling, "Wait, we're not going to harm you." A boy in my high school was into supernatural stuff and he claimed he had somehow seen me in my bedroom. He described in detail what I was wearing. Everyone thought that I was in on it. I wasn't. One time in high school science lab I dropped a Petri dish. It fell a good 4 feet and hit the ground, bounced up a foot or 2, then shattered in midair. It blew my freaking mind. I was responsible for almost getting Game 3 of the 2004 World Series locked down because I was radioactive. I was in Sao Paulo, Brazil, on a business trip. The night before departure I wanted a drink but the lounge of the hotel was closed for a private party. I didn't want to go out of the building alone at that time so I started talking to one of the private guards. Then this lady came closer and asked if there are problems. I explained her I was hoping to get a drink but didn't want to bother. She started talking in a very good English. I can speak enough Portuguese to get by but I'm definitely not fluent, and explained me it was a party after a wedding. She was older than me, probably late 40s but very good looking. She asked me if I wanted to join her upstairs for a drink and she brought me to her room. We spent 30 minutes banging on every possible surface until she told me she had to go back to the lounge. I asked her why the hurry and she told me she was the mother of the bride. I felt like in a MasterCard advert. In 2010, I was visiting my aunt in New York with my family. We went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art early on a Tuesday, and while walking around I thought I saw Will Ferrell in sunglasses and a hat, so I walked up and asked him if he was Will Ferrell. He looked me in the eyes and said yes, in fact I am, so I asked for a picture and autograph and he promptly said no, because if I do then you can prove you really met me. Then he walked off. I was watching a minor league game and asked Deion Sanders for a hello. That was it. He waved me off and I was about 7. And somehow what a prima donna came out of my mouth. The look on his face when he stared at me was priceless. Fast forward and he is ending his career with Dallas and I am waiting for a flight out. He has a huge posse holding up the line. So I yell, what prima donna is holding up the dang line? His posse parts and he looks at me and then a hint of recognition hits his face. And he goes back to talking to the ticket lady with a quizzical look on his face. I once was walking and listening to music when I found a $20 bill on the ground. The song that was playing was Money for Nothing. I've caught 6 dodgeballs without dropping one. I also sent a kid to the hospital because my tennis serve hit him in the crotch. When I was in 5th grade I ate stuffed mushrooms with Slash from Guns N' Roses while I was visiting my aunt in LA, who was a record producer for Geffen Records at the time. Only part I don't believe is that a 5th grader would eat mushrooms. No one ever believes me. I was 8 years old and my babysitter was 16. My parents worked extremely late, overnight, so she often slept over. One night she decided to sleep in my bed. I asked her to show me her boobs and she did and told me I could touch them. She also was only wearing a thong. It's probably borderline assault or something, but I didn't care. I was the only 8-year-old that had asked to see boobs and received. I looked her up on Facebook recently and she is a beast. I was walking down my driveway to wait for the school bus in middle school, and I noticed a cute little fawn maybe 10 yards away. I live in a wooded area. I was just thinking how cute this little guy was when its mother comes crashing through the woods, headbutts my hip, and then hauls ass back through the trees with its baby. I had a bruise on my hip for a week and no one would believe how I got it. When I was about 16 I was in a restaurant in Melbourne with my cousin. I noticed a young guy eating with his family. I said to my cousin, haha, hey look, it's Harry Potter because of his similarities to Daniel Radcliffe. My cousin replied, UHH, that is Harry Potter. It was. He was in Australia shooting an Aussie film. A bit later I went to the toilets to pee. Whilst I was at the urinal Daniel came in and began to pee in the urinal next to me. I looked over at him and we made eye contact and he said nice wand, finished, washed his hands and walked out. No one has ever believed this and only my cousin can vouch for the fact that we saw him but not for what he said in the toilet. It's like he knows nobody will ever believe you when you do tell. When I was a wee little thing I loved the Power Rangers. This was when the Power Rangers first came out. They were all that was good and right with the world, and damn it, I was a member of their fan club. I was in Discovery Zone and I saw them, the Power Rangers, who'd shown up for some kid's birthday in a private room. I begged and pleaded with my father to let me meet them, but he told me that I couldn't go in there because it wasn't my party and I didn't know anyone and they would kick me out. In theory, he was right. Well, as we walked away, my little feet trudged me back to the door. I cracked it open and slipped into the private room where other kids were having a blast and the Power Rangers were talking to everyone equally. I got to meet them, shake their hands and give them all hugs, and it was probably the defining moment of my life up until that point. I was maybe 6-7. My dad looked mortified, but walked into the private room in an attempt to fetch me and apologize. But lo and behold, no one really cared that I was there. No one seemed to notice that I didn't know anyone, and none of the parents seemed to notice that no one knew my father. In hindsight, most of the parents probably didn't know each other and were at the party just to be with their kids. At this point I should mention that I met the Power Rangers, not some people dressed in Power Ranger costumes, but the actors who played them on TV. At the time, I didn't even understand the concept behind actors, so to me, these guys were the Power Rangers, and when they left, they would go back to fighting monsters. I spent an hour with some random kids who became my friends, and the Power Rangers before I got tired, wished everyone goodbye, and they waved back like we'd been friends forever. The other kids were friendly, the Power Rangers were awesome people, and the parents all seemed chill about it. A condom fell from the sky and hit my windscreen. Only me and my friend were in the car at the time. Also the condom was used. Sorry about that, I was aiming for your friend. I got a call from a police officer telling me if I didn't pay some old fines within a week he would come arrest me. The total was $267.63. It was about 2 weeks before Christmas, so I was really sweating it. The very next day I got a check in the mail for $267.63 for overpaid child support throughout the year. Craziest, most unexplainable thing I've ever had happen to me. I shot a BB gun and pinned a wasp to my friend's patio wall. She was there and saw it, but her brother definitely didn't believe us. I got to stay at the Radissons for the night in the city which I go to university. The room was actually booked for my uncle who works for an organization which gets bad press, but he couldn't make it and the room had already been booked, so he asked me if I wanted to stay. Anyway, it's the first time I have ever been in a hotel, and so when I get my key card and get into the lift I couldn't seem to get the key card to work. About a minute later this really beautiful blonde lady walks in. I am not exaggerating, she was gorgeous. If I saw her again I would recognize her, and she shows me how to use my card. She got off at the 3rd floor and so it meant I had to insert my card again to go to my floor, which was the 5th floor. Again I couldn't get it to work. But no worry, the lady comes back and she's wearing a coat, so I guess she was going out for dinner or something. We laughed about how I was stuck, except this time she took me up to the 5th floor and I hadn't told her about the floor I was staying on. It was only after I got out of the lift and got to my room that I realized something was awry, and so I rang my uncle, who gave me no explanation but told me to leave the hotel immediately no matter what. He actually shouted, "Get out of there now." As we're having this conversation the fire alarm went off and I had no idea what was going on. I started panicking and so I went to the fire assembly point and saw the lady stood there talking to 2 guys and another lady all dressed for business, and I'm really freaked out. For the first time in my adult life I had no idea what to do, especially because it was pretty blatant. The conversation they were having was about me and one of the guys kept glancing at me. Now for the bit that nobody believes, I then get a call from an unknown number telling me to check out like normal and to be swift. It was not my uncle but someone else. So when everyone is going back in, I go straight to reception and check out. I then call my uncle to give him an update and he tells me to go straight to the university library and spend the day there because there are lots of people and it has secure access. Till this day he hasn't given me an explanation as to what was going on. Needless to say I have not stayed in a hotel since, and honestly I would probably be pretty anxious if I ever had to. Also none of my friends believe me. I don't blame them, because it all seems too far-fetched. When I was like 11 I went to this big children's fishing festival where all the kids in attendance got their names put into a hat and then drawn out to determine which guide they were paired with, in groups of 2-3 per guide. Well, lo and behold, my name is first, so my brother and I get to go with the number 1 guide there, who happens to be a professional fisherman or something. The guy was the only guide to come with his own cameraman, like an actual cameraman tagged along with us. So apparently this guy, who was very nice and I had a great time with, is a somewhat famous fishing video maker, and my brother and I were filmed every time we reeled in a fish. The guide told us we may make it into one of his videos or even onto a fishing TV show, but he didn't know for sure. So one day I'm sitting there watching ESPN on a Sunday morning before church and no crap, there I am with my little brother catching a big ass walleye. Of course my parents were getting ready and my brother was in the shower, so no one else saw it, but it was nuts. This was before DVR or anything and I had no idea it was coming, so I couldn't set up a recording, but I was on ESPN for like 30 seconds. Probably the pinnacle of my fame right there. When I was about 8 years old my dad and I were throwing the Nerf Whistler football out in the yard. My dad had quite the arm back in the day, so when we got done throwing around he decided he wanted to send a laser right in the back of his truck from about 30 yards away. Naturally I begin to run inside and dad accidentally hits me so hard with a Whistler that it has left a permanent dimple in the side of my face. Lucky for me though, it hit me square in the jaw where normal dimples usually are. That is probably the source of why people don't believe me, but that crap happened. Hearing that high-pitched whistle coming directly for my face was absolutely terrifying. My first ever childhood pet, a yellow lab named after a famous lioness, was eaten to death by a leopard. Once, an earwig broke my headphones by pinching the lead. Now, I'm no entomologist, and I don't know if earwigs actually possess enough pincer strength to break wires, but those headphones were working. An earwig pinched the lead, and then they no longer worked. Obviously it wanted your ears to be unobstructed so it can crawl in and eat your brains. When I was 8, I was riding bikes with my mom, hit a gravel patch, and fell. I don't remember why I didn't have a helmet on, but I hit my head on a rock and was knocked unconscious. I saw and heard two old ladies walking down the street. They came over and stood by me for a little while. When I opened my eyes, my mom was running out from a neighbor's house after calling an ambulance, and the old ladies were gone. 10 people came out to assist me. None of them saw those women. Your ancestors needed your genes passed on, so they waited with you. I ate chicken fingers with Lil White while drunk and then promptly got kicked out the bar by his dwarf assistant. Can we get more context? I need more context. When I was 12 years old I owned a chihuahua named Taco. One day at home, Gulf Coast of Florida, I took Taco out for a little walk so he could go to the bathroom. Chihuahuas' legs are so short that if they run away you can literally go catch them with no problem, so leashes aren't required. So Taco was minding his business, and as the 12-year-old boy I got distracted by a pair of lizards humping on a nearby tree. I noticed a shadow fly by and then heard a little yelp. I switched my focus only to see Taco in the talons of an eagle or hawk flying away into the sunset. I then proceeded to scream, "Taco, no!" but I couldn't do anything about it, so I walked inside and told my mom, and she still doesn't believe me to this day. 8 years later no one believes me and I am still missing Taco. In 1974 Carlos Santana's brother George was playing in a band at the club I bartended at. This was a Monday night. Small crowd. About 10 PM Carlos came in and sat at the bar all night. I was the only bartender. Had a long conversation with him. Nice guy but a little eccentric. I had 2 roommates and dated them at the same time. You have been visited by the soul of Gabe the dog. Comment, sleep well papa, you will be missed. For heavenly books throughout your whole life. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.